So today we're going to paint these flower blocks, and I have these 4-inch wood blocks that we're going to pipe flowers on top of. We're going to use 2 different tips and 3 different colors plus the texture. And we're going to start by doing a foundation coat with our base coat here all around the sides and tops of this little wood block. And the base coat here is kind of thick. You know, it's like a nice thick viscosity paint that we can reuse as kind of a primer and a finish coat. And we're going to prime all the sides to it. You know, do it. You could leave it on the table. You can pick it up with your hand. But you could pretty much get it all done in one coat because it's kind of has the perfect viscosity for a one coat. I'm just going to keep finish painting all around the sides there. Make sure you get kind of the areas that kind of build up to like almost look like drippy, or they build up around the corners. And I'm going to get the top painted on there. Some of it's going to kind of fall off the edge and you'll need to smooth that out a little bit. And I'm kind of just doing a crisscross pattern. It's pretty much going to be completely covered on the top, but it's good to have a nice foundation coat to adhere. And I'm going to go around all the sides to make sure I don't have any kind of like bulbous areas that are building up around the corner or drippy, because the sides will actually be exposed for the most part everywhere. So you want to make sure that the sides are nice and cleanly painted. And I'm kind of, you can do any pattern. I kind of just do a crosshatch pattern all around there. So that's pretty much it. And you can go wet on wet, or you can wait for it to dry. It's up to you. The paint is designed to go wet on wet, so it's really not going to matter. And so we're going to work out of the bag here, and we're going to cut a tip off, and we're going to, make an opening about 3/4 of an inch or so, and we're just going to pipe this dollops of paint directly onto our little palettes, or these little cardboard palettes that we have here. Just enough to begin some color mixing here. And so this whole thing is all pretty much working with, besides the base coat, with working with these pastry tips. And this one here, I call it Tulip Tip. It's a Russian tip. I'm not sure the exact name of it. And the other tip we're going to use is a leaf tip. And once I get this in the bag, you got to be really careful in how you cut it, because you don't want to cut it too far, because you don't want the tip to slip through. So only cut it enough just to get barely the tip going through there, because otherwise it'll push all the way out. So it's always better to do just more cuts with less. And so we're going to take the periwinkle color and we're going to start mixing it into the white texture. We're going to use multi-tones in the periwinkle. We're not going to thoroughly mix it all the way, so when it comes through the pastry bag, it kind of has a multi-tone to it. Sometimes I mix the paint all the way through, and sometimes, it all depends on what our goals are here. But basically, we're leaving the inside lighter than the outside. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the palette knife and coat the entire outside or the inside of the bag, and just keep switching it all around and get a nice, good, liberal coating around the bag. Because what's going to happen is the inside's going to come out a light tone and the outside's going to come a dark tone. Do this a lot to get multi-tones, on there. And so once you get the paint all the way around the bag, I'm going to fill into the center of the bag with my mixture, my very light mixture. You can see here the 2 different tones. That's why you don't want to mix too much of the periwinkle with the white, because you won't have a good contrast. But I'm basically going to scoop up all the loosely mixed white and periwinkle together into the bag, trying to just drop it into the center of the bag. Just dropping it in. It's important to just, tamp that bag down too, and so it gets in there really tight, because once we get it all in, we're going to make sure we can get all the air out, because you get these little air explosions, if you don't get the air out. So once I get all it in, I'm just I pick it up on the side and I kind of drop it down and, squeezing that air out. I'm going to do my practice. And so all this we're going to do. So practice on the palette, because you can scoop it back into the bag after you practice. But it's good to get it right and make sure they're coming out properly on the palette before you actually put them on the little wood block, so you don't mess them up on the wood block. So just practice as much as you need to, and just know that you can just throw it right back in there. The key to working with these flower tips, these Russian tips, is you have to get the perfect amount of forceful pressure and be drawing up as you let it go. Otherwise, the form doesn't come out and they look like blobs, and that's why it's really important to practice, first. And I just add a little bit of white to the top of the bag because, it's going to come, the last ones will come out with a little bit more white in them. So again, keep practicing. Practice that forceful little squirt out. Twist that bag tight so it's really tight, so you know that they're going to come out properly. Don't start going onto the wood panel until you know you've got these nice flower shapes coming out. And next we're going to put the leaf tip in. And I'm going to make sure the leaf tip is lined up sideways with the bag because the bag has a seam. And so the points are going to line up with the seam in the bag. And you can see here I'm kind of just twisting the tip in the bag, and the kind of flat part is lining up with the flat part of the bag. And I left a little bit of room. It's not all the way down, so I'm cutting off just a small tip, just enough so I can push the tip out without it just, again, you don't want it to come all the way out of the bag, so just cut a small enough hole as you need. So now we're going to start prepping for the leaf side, and I've cleaned my knife there, and we're going to start getting all this prepped up to build the green so both of our bags are ready to go, and we can just keep piping both alternately at the same time. And so we've got our green here and we've got our white. I'm going to pipe not quite all of the paint on there. I'm going to leave a little reserve in case we're a little bit shy somewhere else. And I'm going to mix the green into the white texture. And I'm not going to mix it super dark because I want to have contrast again. So we'll be putting the mid-viscosity in the bag again so we can get that kind of two-tone texture going on. So I've got a little bit on the knife there, and I'm going to line up these points, like 4 points on there, so we have a nice variegated look there. 2 points. So it comes out just on the corners, it's going to be dark, and on the centers, you can just see how we have those nice lines. And that paint is very strongly pigmented, so it's going to show up pretty easily when we pipe out the bag. And so I'm holding the bag open and I'm filling it up with all the rest of that paint. All that scraped out and put in there. And then we're going to kind of tamp it down and then practice those little dollops. And you can see here how it's coming out multi-toned. Like a little bit on the side is darker and on the back side. That way when we go into the little block, we can have varying tones of greens in there. And so I practiced my little green leaves on there, and again we're going to scoop that back in there, so don't worry about it. Practice as much as you need to so you get it right before you go onto the wood block. Now I'm just getting everything ready to go we're actually going to be doing the piping. Make sure you're comfortable with all of the firmness you have on the bag and everything before you actually start piping onto the wood block. Make sure you've got that good flower form coming out also on the Russian tip before you actually go on there. I'm going to start, and I'm probably going to fill up, most of the top. I'm just coming a little off the edge there. It's a very delicate way you put it on there. And you can see right there, that was one where, it came out just as a blob. And so that's the thing is you have to make sure the top doesn't have paint built on it before you actually go on your next one. So just if you have to, between each one, go ahead and clean off the tip if you need to. So just if you have one coming out that's not coming out fully formed, just wipe the tip off of the pastry bag. And I'm kind of moving in all directions, coming in, piling them on top of each other, creating this mound of these little periwinkle tulips with the white centers there. You can see here now, you can see how the white is really coming out strongly in the center. And I kind of just piped them all around and left that gap in there for the leaves because I wanted it dominant in the periwinkle flowers and then minor in the green leaves. And so I left that space there for this kind of foliage area. And as I'm piping them in, I'm kind of pulling the knife up and out. So I'm kind of filling in that area there in multiple different directions. And it's kind of like a nice foliage area there. And I'm going to kind of pull them in around the side and kind of so it's coming in off the panel. And I'm going to look for any areas that I might have missed and fill them in with the tulips. And again, anything I have left over, I can go ahead and pop in the bag. Any little bit of white I have left over. That's why I reserved a little bit of white just in case, because I didn't know where I would need it more on the flower side or the leaf side. But now that I know where I've got the block completely full, I can fill it all the way back in and just fill in the random areas that might need, more flowers. Don't leave any spaces on the block, because when it dries, it'll create like a cavity. So this is the point where you just go in and look for any kind of voids that need to be filled in. And so you get a nice full, bouquet of flowers, on there. Again, make sure that top is clean. Be really careful at this end, because it starts to get empty. It gets harder and harder to actually get a perfectly formed flower. So this is a point where you can also mess up too. So make sure you have enough in there to get that good firm pressure. So I'm going to go in with the last little bit here and pipe in some leaves. And just, at your own liberty, just put as many leaves in as you want. I'm going to keep one area without leaves just so it has a dominant, nice blue. And you can see here I'm going along the side there. And again, it's up to you. You can pop in leaves anywhere you want. And you can see that nice line of green that I was talking about, where you put those stripes in. And to get that nice variegated look. And I'm just looking for random areas. Voids is mainly what I'm looking for, in composition. Coming down the side a little bit there, so it gives a little bit of depth and dimension. But there you have this nice block just full of flowers and petals.